This is 7's Afternoon News with Ann Sanders.
Good afternoon. Families are demanding action after air crash investigators today revealed how flight MH17 crashed over Ukraine last year. They've painstakingly pieced together the wreckage to come up with the answers. The latest from our reporter who's there in just a moment. In a shock move, Westpac has today announced a rise in its variable home loan interest rate. A man has been found stabbed to death after a car crash. Was he the victim of deadly road rage? Plus, the latest on the grandfather who's still in hospital after surviving for 6 days, lost in the outback. Jim.
Thank you, Anne. In sport, big trade news in the AFL, plus a drugs ban in rugby league. Also ongoing injury concerns for the Wallabies ahead of a sudden death quarter-final at the Rugby World Cup. And down to hard work for the Aussies just weeks before the first test against the Kiwis. Sal.
Thanks, Jim. On the weather front, spring heat has hit us once again as temperatures rise in southeastern Australia. More detail in 10 minutes.
It's the image that had people around the world staring at their screens today saying, wow. Dutch investigators have pieced together part of the Malaysia Airlines plane that crashed in Ukraine in July last year. And this is what the wreckage has told them. MH17 was shot down by a Russian Buk missile. It struck the cockpit, killing the crew first, and caused the front of the plane to shear off. The Dutch Safety Board went on to say the plane should never have been there because it was too dangerous and Ukraine should have closed its airspace. While the report doesn't lay blame, Ukraine's Prime Minister said there was no doubt Russia was behind it. While Russia has questioned the motives behind the Dutch investigation. Hugh Whitfield reports from the Netherlands.
This is all that remains of Malaysian Airlines flight MH17, twisted fragments of its metal skin peppered with blast holes. Now, Ukraine hasn't avoided criticism in this report either for not shutting down the airspace over what was a known conflict zone where the Ukrainian army was fighting the rebels in the Donetsk region. There were 160 other commercial airliners that flew this route on this day, 3 other commercial planes that were nearby to MH17 when it was struck by the missile. The investigators say there needs to be a review of commercial planes flying over conflict zones right around the world.
Thank you, Hugh. 38 Australian citizens and residents died in the disaster. Today, relatives demanded those responsible be held to account. Max Futcher spoke to a grieving Queensland family.
7 Queenslanders were among the victims on board MH17, and overnight their families have been studying this report released by Dutch authorities. Well, it's warming up again across the country with Adelaide feeling the heat this afternoon. Sally Bowrey joins us, and Sal, it's going to be even hotter tomorrow.
Oh, that's right, Anne. The mercury has skyrocketed into the 30s once again with hot northerly winds affecting a big chunk of the country today. That's only going to intensify tomorrow as a hot air mass from central Australia streams out into the southeast of Australia, hitting Adelaide. It'll also affect Tasmania, triggering total fire bans across a large part of the state for tomorrow. Hobart's tipped to reach 30 degrees. Canberra and Sydney will see the heat peak on Friday, but over in the west, Perth's run of hot sunny weather has come to an abrupt end. The past 7 days have been hovering around 32 degrees on average, which is the hottest October week in Perth in 120 years. Today it is cool and cloudy and currently 21 degrees, but I'll have the full forecast a little later, Anne.
See you then. Thanks, Al. Coming up next in 7 News at 4, the itinerary for next month's Royal Tour of Australia. Also, Hillary Clinton's big test in her presidential campaign. How did she go in her first TV debate? And what happened when a 12-year-old high on ice held up a convenience store? Prince Charles will celebrate his 67th birthday in Perth next month. The itinerary for his royal tour with the Duchess of Cornwall was released this morning. It begins in Adelaide, where the couple will touch down on November the 10th. They'll spend time in the Barossa Valley for a taste of life there. The couple will then travel to Canberra for Remembrance Day commemorations. The Royal Highnesses will then head to Sydney, where they'll meet military police at Victoria Barracks to mark their 100th anniversary. They'll then fly to Albany and Perth. Charles will celebrate his birthday with a barbecue on Cottesloe Beach on November the 14th. It's the same beach where an Australian model famously kissed the Prince in 1979. He's not expected to go swimming this time around on what will be his 15th visit to Australia. Next in 7's afternoon news, we'll check the finance markets. Also, the new battle between the technology companies as they fight it out for your wrist. And later, the chimp who's been left an orphan after his mother died giving birth. Checking finance now. Joining us today, Stephen Daglian from CommSec. Hello, Stephen. How did the market do today?
A very good afternoon to you, Anne. Well, look, not the best of sessions for the Aussie market. Shares actually have dropped now for 3 consecutive days, but we were only down by about 0.1%. And the good news, I guess, is we were down by about 5 times as much in the earlier part of the session. And keep in mind, too, that the market hit the best levels in about a month and a half in the late part of last week. But today we had energy stocks struggling most, dropping for the best part of 3.5%. That was because of a big fall in the oil price. Keep in mind, too, that last week the energy sector rose by about 14%, and finally Westpac was in a trading halt, which means you can't buy or sell shares in Westpac for the next few days. Basically, it's raising $3.5 billion from investors to try and meet stricter regulatory requirements, and the Aussie dollar a little softer at 72.2 US.
All right, and Stephen, some Australian companies have been on the hunt for takeover targets.
Exactly right, and one of them is Domino's Pizza, one of the best performers on the Aussie market in the past few years. It actually has doubled in value in just 24 months, but today it announced it's spending about 31.5 million euros, that's about 50 million Aussie, to buy a French pizza chain called Pizza Sprint. Doesn't sound very French, but it adds about 89 stores to its network of more than 300 stores now in France.
Stephen Daglian from CommSec, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Well, forget smartphones and tablets. The big battle among technology giants now is a war for your wrist. Samsung today launched its watch, which can do pretty much everything a phone can. With his review, here's 7's technology editor, Juro Sen.
Well, get ready. The wearables market is about to take off. In 2 years' time, it's estimated it'll be worth $1 billion in Australia. And today, Samsung has taken on Apple for the style stakes with the release of the Gear S2. They still tell the time.
Next, the Australian first launched today to stop family violence. Also, a woman's plea in court over the crash that left 7's Glenn Wheeler badly injured. And we'll show you the Colette Dinnigan designs that have today gone on sale in a supermarket.
This is 7's Afternoon News with Ann Sanders.
If you've just joined us, good afternoon. Great to have your company. These are our top stories on 7. Dutch officials have confirmed Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 was shot down by a Russian Buk missile. Their report does not lay blame, but Ukraine's Prime Minister is adamant Moscow was responsible. Westpac has lifted its variable home loan interest rate by 0.2%, claiming it's to meet legal liquidity requirements. It's been revealed teenager Farhad Jabbar was in touch with Islamic State recruiter Neil Prakash before shooting dead a New South Wales Police Force employee. Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall will tour Australia next month. And still to come in sport with Jim Wilson, the Aussie tennis champion, making the switch to cricket. Things got personal in federal parliament today as Labor targeted the private wealth of Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. The opposition raised offshore funds that both he and wife Lucy invest in, which are based in the Cayman Islands, a well-known tax haven. Political reporter Amelia Brace has more.
In what was really the first sign that Labor's willing to attack the character of the new Prime Minister.
Last night's show was a sellout, but we're told there are still tickets available for tonight. Next in 7's afternoon news, the chimpanzee that's been left an orphan after his mother died during his birth. And in sport with Jim Wilson, the ongoing fitness concerns for the wallabies. An orphan baby chimpanzee has made his public debut at the Montage Zoo east of Adelaide. After losing his mother, his chances of survival were slim, until another mum started taking care of him. El Hassi has more.
After what's been a heartbreaking week for Zoos SA, today it's found a silver lining to step in with supplements if she needs a bit of help.
Time for sport with Jim Wilson. Breaking news in rugby league and a drugs ban, Jim.
Yes, and good afternoon to you. Good afternoon, everyone. Former Canberra winger Shandor Earl has been banned for 4 years Under the league's anti-doping policy, Earl fronted the tribunal last month to seek a reduction and be eligible to return next season. The tribunal reserved its decision until today, finding Earl guilty of trafficking, using and possession of banned substances. The suspension is backdated, so he'll be eligible to return to the NRL in August 2017. He has 21 days to appeal the ruling. In AFL trade news, troubled Gold Coast midfielder Harley Bennell will return home to Western Australia after the Fremantle Dockers secured his services on a 3-year contract. Meantime, Geelong has pulled off another recruiting coup, with former Carlton utility Lockie Henderson agreeing to join the Cats. Geelong traded its first-round pick to the Blues, becoming the first club to benefit from a new rule allowing teams to trade future picks. Henderson joins former Crow Patrick Dangerfield and former Eagle Scott Selwood at the Cats. And a whole lot more sport coming your way at 6.
See you then. Thank you very much, Jim. Up next, the Hollywood star who's already bought the rights to a movie about Volkswagen's scandal. That's right after a look ahead to 7 News at 6. News of the Volkswagen emissions scandal only broke last month, but there are already plans for a movie. Leonardo DiCaprio's production company has picked up the film rights from a book about the widespread deception. Next at 7's Afternoon News, Thursday's weather forecast with Sally Bowrey. Sally Bowrey joins us with the forecast. Sal, the spring heat has returned.
Yeah, it sure has, Anne. Hot northerly winds are driving heat that's been building up over central Australia across the east, with temperatures spiking once again into the 30s as we head towards the weekend. Let's have a look, though, at how skies are travelling right at the moment. First, let's head off to Sydney. There's been plenty of sun today. We've seen those northeasterly winds kick in, making it feel a little bit on the sticky side, a little bit muggy. Right now, it's currently 22 degrees in the city with crystal clear skies. Also been sunny in Adelaide today, also seeing those northeasterly winds. That means into this evening it'll keep temperatures fairly warm. Currently it's 30 degrees. Hobart is crystal clear with light winds. 18 degrees is the story at the moment, and the weather's been pretty miserable in Perth today. We had those showers on and off. That'll continue into this evening. Right now it's currently 21 degrees with fairly grey skies. On the satellite, we've got warm winds ahead of a trough. That's what's causing that very hot weather across South Australia, Victoria and New South Wales, which will build into tomorrow. A low pressure trough moving over South Australia will also just trigger the odd thunderstorm into tomorrow. While we've also got a low in the west, that's causing showers and just the occasional storm more to the central parts of WA, but also down parts of the west coast. Let's have a look at how Thursday is shaping up around the country tomorrow. 21 degrees the top in Perth, 34 in Adelaide, nice and warm there. Also warm into Melbourne, 34 degrees, 30 in Hobart, 25 in Sydney and 28 degrees in Canberra. It'll be 26 in Brisbane. The Friday forecast is also looking fairly warm down the east coast tomorrow. 28 degrees the story in Sydney, 30 degrees in Canberra and 25 in Adelaide. A hot one ahead. We'll have the latest weather at 6 o'clock, Anne.
Good on you, Sal. Thank you. And that's the afternoon news for this Wednesday. Our next bulletin is 7 News at 6. And on Sunrise in the morning, Koshi's new 4-week money makeover. I'm Ann Sanders. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Stay with 7 Now for the Chase Australia. See you tomorrow.